How long have you guys been doing the show now? It's like at least got to be
115 weeks.
Yep.
Actually,
Okay.
116 weeks.
116, so just over 2 years.
Yeah.
My math fails after that.
Well, it's
Yeah.
52 weeks in a year.
Yeah,
and
that's
we've
it.
released 116
That's
episodes.
as far as I get.
We've
So-
only missed 1 week.
Really? Why'd you miss that week?
My best friend died.
Oh, God, sorry to hear that. Yikes. Yeah, I know how hard it is to get something out every single week.
Yeah.
Especially when you have somebody else that you have to, because your schedule, I mean, you had to record without him at least once, right?
No.
No?
I don't
Never?
even know how to do that.
You would.
I wouldn't know what to do. Yeah, I don't know how to work that machine.
This little machine?
Yeah.
That's an excuse if I've ever heard one. I didn't expect that to come out of your mouth.
Yeah. We don't, I don't mess with his stuff.
Yeah.
He doesn't mess with mine.
What stuff don't you mess with that's his? I feel like.
His guns.
Oh yeah. I wouldn't
Weapons.
I wouldn't touch somebody else's.
Knives.
Yeah. That makes sense. So you wouldn't. That's something you don't touch.
No, he does touch
Actually,
it.
this one is mine. Which one?
Yeah.
Oh, those two there. I didn't even notice.
Actually, that's a whole nother story right there.
Yeah, this one is mine. But that one, he's good with touching the knives. It's all good. Yeah.
They can't go off by mistake.
These were pretty apropos when we did the Machete Season podcast, number 16.
Machete Season?
Yeah.
There's is that a book?
It's a book, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I've heard of that.
It's
I feel like
it might be, let's call it in the unfolding of my podcast. That one was a little bit of a touchstone, we'll say, because it was it's super horrible. It was about
the violence. You mean?
the violence. Yeah, it was about the genocide in Rwanda.
Oh yeah, that's
and
why I've
it
heard.
was. Yeah, it was 800,000 Tutsis were murdered by the Hutus in about 100 days, mostly with machetes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Which you can imagine the math breakdown and how much chaos that is.
it's mayhem.
Because without explosions or something, that's just
Just hacking
yeah.
meat.
unbelievable.
And the weirdest thing about it was there's no the Hutus and the Tutsis. Even though I've had people say no, they're different. They're not different. Like they say that Tutsis are taller, but Tutsis and Hutus have intermarried for many generations. So there's all sizes. They speak the same language. They have the same religion, which is Catholicism, by the way. They have the same type of names. And so the only way that you could tell that someone was a Tutsi is if you knew them.
And they told you or something?
You just have to know. Like,
oh, you just, yeah.
Like, do you know what nationality I am?
Yeah, no. So
you could kind of tell by my name,
Scottish,
you could whatever, but like, no,
Yeah.
you don't know. But if you knew me, then you know, yeah, that guy's a Tutsi and we need to kill him. So that just tells you that the people that you were killing, you knew. It wasn't like you were killing, it wasn't the often talked about, hey, I'm going to desensitize myself from who I'm murdering. Hey, we're just murdering the bad guys. We're murdering the targets. They're not real people.
Right.
No. These are people, and you know them, and you've worked with them, and you go to their house for dinner. And your sister, by the way, is married to one of them. That's how you know. So that's why you're going to kill them.
Oh man.
So yeah, that was number 16, and that one was kind of a shift. If you were going to make it through that one, you were kind of ready to get in the game.
You understood.
Did you have like a drop off of people that went, I can't handle this?
Not a drop off.
Not a drop off, but people would say I had to stop.
Yeah.
I had to stop. I think that was the first one. I don't know. No, actually, the first one where I really realized myself was we did another one called The Rape of Nanking. And for that one, that was the first, because that's even worse.
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest with you, it's even worse because they're doing like horrible assaults, sexual assaults on women and girls and families. I mean, it's just awful. That was the first one where I was just reading with I was just like reading the words with no emotion whatsoever, just numb, just reading the words, trying to get them out so we could move on, It's freaking horrible.
How do you turn off your emotions like that? Do you have a manual process that you go through somehow? I mean, you're used to that from Iraq?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely pay attention to where I'm at emotionally all the time. And so that way, if I feel myself starting to like not be in control in a situation where I should be in control, then yeah, I just kind of take a step back inside my head and go, okay, you need to get a grip right now, keep it together.
Does that work with your kids too?
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's I always say that the difference between leadership with your kids and with anyone else is you have a much more emotional commitment to your kids.
Yeah.
And so it's a lot harder to control your emotions,
Yeah.
but it's equally important that you do it. In fact, it's probably more important that you do it with your kids. Of course, that doesn't mean you're emotionally numb to your children,
Right.
because then they think you don't care about them. So it's a dichotomy.
Yeah.
It exists in everything, and you got to balance those two.
Because they want you to react in some way, but you can't react in a way that takes you down down a rabbit hole or down an area where you lack control, and then you do or say something that you regret.
Yeah, well, I was just talking about this. Are we recording?
Yeah, is that okay?
Yeah,
I
okay.
can turn it off. If you...
I was just talking about this on one of my last podcasts, and it's this idea of if you come in and you're really angry,
Yeah.
We work together, and you come to me and you're all mad about something, and my reaction is to say, Jordan, calm down. Don't be so mad, right?
Right, yeah.
Immediately, you're just going to get even madder.
Yeah,
and you're
definitely.
not listening to me, and blah, blah, blah. So I've lost you. So when I have a situation where you come in and you're really mad, what I do is I give you a slightly diminished reflection of the emotions that you're giving, so that I'm empathizing with what you're saying. So if you say, I can't believe that this happened with this client, I go, man, did they really do that? That's ridiculous, right? So now all of a sudden I'm on your team.
It's like Aikido or something.
Now you can start listening to me. Well,
Yeah.
it's more like jujitsu.
Jiu-jitsu?
We'll get into those.
I don't know
nuances
enough
if you
about
want.
those things.
Yeah. But yeah, you have to give them a little bit of the diminished reflection of what they're showing, and that way, you get on their side and they start listening to you.
Yeah. Yeah. So that is that a conscious process with the kids now, or with anybody now, or do you just kind of snap into that immediately?
You know what? All the stuff that I do is sort of like I've done it for a long time.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until I started talking and teaching people about it that I was like, oh, here's what you do here, and this is what you do in this situation.
Yeah.
And I especially 5 years ago, when I first really started working with civilians who would get into these details, I would actually have to ask myself, like, okay, what would I actually do right here?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'd have to do that because I didn't know what the answer was because I hadn't thought through it.
Sure.
But then, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, when I was working with civilians all the time and they're asking me these questions. And the reason they're asking me the questions, and SEALs didn't ask those kind of questions sometimes, because SEALs are they're like too arrogant to ask the question. They don't want to say, well, how would you handle that? Only a few of the guys that really work closely with me would say, like, hey, what do you think I should do here? But most of the time, SEALs, we're just going to figure it out, and we don't want to ask a question. They'll ask a question about something tactical. They'll ask a question about, but some question about, someone's human nature and the emotions. Like, you're not going to get a bunch of SEALs that are running to me asking those questions.
Sure, yeah,
and
probably.
they did, which is, I wouldn't want them to.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even want them to. But when I started answering these questions with civilians, then it was me thinking through the process that I actually use, which is all stuff that I just picked up from being in various both subordinate and leadership positions for 20 years in the Navy.
So you picked all this up by through, I hate the word osmosis because it's never really osmosis, but through experience. Nobody ever went, hey, look, if somebody comes to you emotional, have a slightly diminished reaction of the same emotion.
Yeah, no one ever said that to me. But luckily for me, in the environment I was in, which was in the military, in teams of people with a structure in it and a leader and subordinate leadership. And when I came in, I was the bottom,
Sure.
I was the bottom of the structure. And then as time went on, I moved up the structure. And so I got to see it from all these different levels. And I definitely paid attention to it, I would say. It was something that I had an interest in, and I had an interest in trying to be good at it. Maybe because I wasn't that great at some of the other things. I'm not the best. I'm not the fastest runner.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't the strongest guy. So the thing that I felt I could do good at was maybe helping with the leadership type stuff. So I paid a lot of attention to it.
That makes sense. Because otherwise, do you feel like you have to be the best at something in order to be a good leader? Or do you feel like you just have to be good at a mix of specific leadership skills?
So there's a bunch of different leadership skills
Yeah.
that you can have. And you're going to get various levels of them, and some of them will be high and some of them will be low. And you're not going to get all high. I don't care who you are. Everyone's going to have some low points in there.
Yeah.
Well, just about everyone is going to have some low points in there. But you're going to take what you have and try and improve the things that you can, and complement, bring other leaders on your team that can complement the areas that you're weak in. And once you do that, you can formulate a good leadership team.
What would you, this is totally off script, but I'm curious now, like, what would you recommend if somebody is in a leadership position and they're subordinate to somebody else and they want to approach that person with some kind of change or feedback that the other person might consider negative? Because when I hear about the SEAL teams and the organizations and stuff like that and how guys might not want to ask for help or advice in certain areas, in the corporate world, a lot of people are afraid to give negative feedback or something that might be perceived as negative to somebody who's above them in the hierarchy.
Well, a real simple way to do that is, let's say you're in charge of the plan, and I think that there might be a better way to do it, or I think the way that you're doing something is not good. And instead of me saying, hey, Jordan, the way that you're executing this is wrong, and I don't think it's a good plan, which is immediately going to offend you.
Sure.
You're going to tell me that I don't know what I'm talking about. You're going to say I should stay in my lane. You're going to say it's above your rank and above your pay grade and all those things. Unless you're a good leader, in which case you'd say, okay, well, what do you think? But if I went to you and said, hey, Jordan, this plan that you've got, I really need some help understanding it because I want to make sure I'm able to execute it really well. Can you explain to me a couple points on why you set this up like this and why this is over here like that? And all it's doing is getting you to think more deeply about your plan. And then it's also, since I started off in a humble position of saying, hey, I want to support your plan because you're the boss and I believe what you're doing. And I just want to make sure that I understand it well enough to really support it. So you actually are trusting me more.
Yeah.
You know that I want to help. You know that I want to help you win. And so you're open to what I'm saying. And so now I've already made big progress in maybe as we discuss that plan, which the plan, once I understand it better, maybe your plan is good. And I just couldn't see it because I didn't understand all the strategic things that are going on. But when we get down to it, I say, oh, okay, well, this thing right here. So why would we do it that way instead of this other way? And now you look at it, now you've got an open mind,
Right.
which completely changes everything. And you go, oh yeah, that way does look pretty good. You know what? That might be a good way to do it. And so you have to be tactful and
So you lead them to the idea themselves, or you find out that the reason they didn't do it the way you thought is because of a different reason that you hadn't contemplated.
yes, and also that is up and down the chain of command. I do it down the chain of command too. If I don't come down and hammer the plan down your throat or into your ears. No, I say, hey, here's the goal that we want to accomplish. How do you think we should do it? Because that way you have ownership of the plan and you'll make it work.
When do you plan, or did you plan the missions by looking at maps? I mean, how does that even work? I didn't even think about this till just now, but you have a map of like Ramadi or something like that, and you're going over strategy, and you're like, all right, we're gonna do this, or is that done somewhere else?
No, we do it.
You do it. Wow.
Yeah.
That's so much responsibility.
Yeah, it is. And it's decentralized responsibility as well. Well, the responsibility isn't decentralized, but the planning part, we would be going into an area and I would look at whatever platoon commander was running that area or whatever squad leader was running that area. And I'd say, hey, here's what you're going to do. Go figure out how to do it. And then they'd come up with a plan and they'd bring it back to me. And 95% of the time I wouldn't have anything to say other than that looks good. The reason that was because we'd already trained. We'd already been through. I'd already talked to these guys and gone through planning cycle after planning cycle after planning cycle so that they thought the way I thought. So when I've got guys thinking the way I think, which I don't want to make that sound bad, like they were stuck with my ideas, but when I had them at least with the same tactical comprehension that I had, well, then when they would come up with plans, they would be in the same tactical parameters that I would think, which are solid. And then if they came up with something that's outside those parameters, then we discuss if it was good or not.
Huh. Okay. Yeah, man. It's just because you have so many people's well-being and lives in your hands, and you gotta really pay closer attention to that plan than probably anything that you've ever created. Like, it's the most important thing in the moment.
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. Every plan that you're coming up with is the most important thing you're doing.
How did you get comfortable with that level of responsibility? Thinking about having to do something like that is highly, it's uncomfortable because it seems so daunting.
I think I kind of grew into it. When I was younger in the SEAL teams, you're responsible for 12 chem lights being attached to a boat that's going to get dropped out of an aircraft, right? And it's pretty important that you do that. But if you don't do it, the boat's going to get lost. So you have like some responsibility as an 18 or 19-year-old kid. And then soon after, and the reason I use chem lights is because I used to joke that that's sort of the bottom of the barrel thing that you're responsible for in the SEAL teams is chem lights and carabiners. Hey, make sure there's carabiners on all these floorboards. And someone's got to do that.
Yeah.
And if someone fails to do that, by the way, you're going to have a bad problem if your boat flips over. You're going to lose all your gear. So these are real things, but you start off with these minor responsibilities, and then as you go on, next thing you're responsible for the motor of the boat, or you're responsible for the radios that you're carrying, and then you eventually become responsible for a small part of the plan, like the route you're going to take in, or the communications plan to talk back to the tactical operations center, and then you get comfortable with that, and then you move on to the next part of the plan. And by the time I was in Iraq for the first time, I'd been in the SEAL teams for 13 years, and I was pretty comfortable with planning and coming up with the way we're going to execute operations.
I know we talked before. We met in May 2016, which actually seems like forever ago now. When you're training, we talked a lot about the training process before in an earlier show, but how different is the training scenario from the actual mission itself? Because it seems like you're striving for continuity with that stuff.
Well, there's a dichotomy in that, and I know I find a dichotomy in everything, but the dichotomy in that is we make the SEAL training, and I'm not talking about the training where you're carrying a boat on your head,
right,
and where you're carrying logs around, because that's hard training, and I don't want to diminish the fact that that's hard training. It's hard, but it's not that big of a deal. You're carrying a boat around, you're tired, you're wet, you're cold, you're doing a bunch of push-ups. It's not that big of a deal. That's not the training I'm talking about. The training that I ran was the tactical training where guys are learning to shoot, move, and communicate and maneuver against the enemy, and they're learning combat leadership. And I wanted that training to be as close as humanly possible to what combat was like. And it would be totally chaotic. It would cause total mayhem. It was very, very realistic. It was so realistic that there was times where I'd have my night vision goggles on watching a platoon go through the training. And if you took pictures of that, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between Iraq, Afghanistan, and our training facility. So it's that similar. And if you press record on an audio recorder and you listen to what was happening, it would sound the same way. Machine gun fire, people yelling, people screaming, it would sound the same. And if you put, a heart rate monitor on the guys, there would be a similar reaction of the physical exertion that they're going through. So there's all these things that would line up very, very well, and it would be almost the exact same thing. And that being said, there's this giant leap between training and combat, which is in combat, you can die and you're going to kill people and you can get killed. So you can't simulate that.
Yeah.
You can't simulate that. And that's why I would make the training scenarios I would make them worst case scenarios with just total, as much chaos as I could possibly pour on the guy, because no matter what you do in a training environment, you can't make it as realistic as it's going to be on the battlefield. And people can die.
So, yeah, you're trying to inoculate them as much as you can because you can't cross that gap of making it real where there's an actual enemy.
Right.
Yeah. Wow. And how do you wrap your head around how do you get around the gap? You just have to dive in it and do it a couple of times, or what? I mean, how are you nervous for your guys the first time they go into combat or anything like that?
Yeah, the biggest nerves I would have would be one of my guys would get hurt or killed, or we would do something really bad as a team or as a platoon or as a task unit, something that was going to have some kind of a negative strategic impact on the whole war, right? So if you accidentally kill a bunch of civilians, right? That's going to have a huge negative impact, and it's a really bad thing. And so that is what I would be afraid of. And obviously I would be afraid of some of my guys. And most of the time when you feel that fear, it's leading up to, because once you're going,
you don't have time
you're not thinking about it anymore.
Yeah, that
you're just doing what you do.
So that was way off where I wanted to originally go, but I like it better than what I had in my notes. That probably happens all the time, I would imagine, when you do shows and when you're in any scenario, like the ones we just discussed.
Yeah, I don't know. You were asking me a couple questions.
No, it's
so
perfect.
Here we are.
Yeah, I love it. I think I think that's much better than the business stuff. And I wonder sometimes though, how come you, when you wrote Extreme Ownership, it crushed. It did a really great amount of sales. I know last interview we looked at, you said you sold over 500,000. It's probably twice that by now.
Yeah,
I don't know.
it's still, as a matter of fact, it's still on. It's on Amazon top. It's number 19 on Amazon most read charts today. Yeah,
and
which
it's
is
been 2 years or a
two
year
and a half years.
Wow.
Coming up on 2.5 years. Yeah, no, it's selling well, and the reason it's selling well is because I think it's because the principles that we talk about that in that book, they apply to all leadership.
Yeah, of course.
All leadership. And, it's amazing. This week I went and talked to 2 different companies in 2 completely different industries. And when I got done with both of them, they both came up and they were saying, it seems like you've been embedded with us for 6 months to know what's going on with this company.
Yeah.
It's crazy that you can know this much about the company. And guess what? I've told both these 2 companies the same thing. The problems, the issues, the leadership challenges that all companies face, they're all the same, and they're the same leadership issues that a SEAL platoon would face. Same problems, same issues. So yeah, we've been seeing it for a while.
Do they find that interesting that their corporate problems mirror that of a SEAL team?
Well, they find that interesting, and I think they kind of like that.
Yeah.
I think everyone's kind of surprised that, we're in the energy industry and we're in the construction industry. And guess what our problems are? We can't find the right people. We need better resourcing. We have people that treat their employees badly. We have employees that don't do what they're supposed to. It's like the same stuff. It's just the same problems over and over again. And again, there are solutions to these problems, and that's why the book continues to sell, and that's why the business echelon front that we have, that's why it continues to keep me working more than I want to.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that too. I figured it's like at some point, because a lot of authors will write a book, it'll hit bestseller, and then they'll milk it for like 10 years. And you're not really doing that, right? You've got the kids' book, you've got the field manual, you've got the other kids' book coming out in a couple of months. I mean, why? That's a lot of work, as you know. You love the process.
I was talking to someone the other day who edits books, and I said, and why don't you write a book? And they're like, I look at a piece of paper and I don't have any words for it.
You have the opposite.
And I'm kind of the opposite.
Yeah.
I've got things in my head that want to come out. And so I look at a blank piece of paper and I got something to put on it. And I think as long as I have that, I'll keep doing it. I don't want to get to a point where I'm trying to force things out of myself. And so if that happens, then I'll just. And there's a fine line. There's a fine line on that, because you kind of have to force something out, right? If you're going to create something, it just doesn't fall onto the paper, right?
No.
You have to take manual labor to get it on the paper. So there's a dichotomy in that too. When I say force, I mean sitting around saying, "Oh, what should I write? What should I write? What should I write?" For me, I know what I'm going to write, but the actual act of writing it is labor. It's work, and I don't enjoy that part. I enjoy a little bit of crafting sentences, and I enjoy some of that, but I don't, I would rather be doing jiu-jitsu. I'd rather be surfing. I'd rather be playing guitar, or just, hitting something with a baseball bat is more fun to me than sitting in front of a computer and writing. But the words are in my head, and so I let them out.
Yeah. Well, you were an English major, right? So you've probably been that way for a long time with the writing.
Yeah, well, I was an English major, but I didn't go to college until later in life. I was I was 29 when I showed up to college, because I'd already been in the military for a while. But yeah, I definitely, I liked writing. I liked the idea of writing. But most important, the reason I went to as an English major was because I wanted to be a good writer, so I could better write for the Navy, which is writing operations orders, reading and understanding rules of engagement, writing evaluations for my troops, those things. And I didn't know that. No one knows that when you're joining the military. You don't know how important writing is. But then when you get to it, you realize, actually writing is everything. And actually communication, if you break it down, communicating with other human beings is what leadership actually is.
Yeah,
That's what leadership actually is.
Yeah.
It's communicating with other human beings. Most of it is, well, depending on the situation you're in, it can be verbal, certainly. It can be written, absolutely. It can be leading by example and showing what you're doing and how you're operating or what the mission is through the way you act. But all those things are forms of communications. And if you don't know how to communicate well as a leader, it's going to be hard for you.
Do you think you had a natural talent for communicating early, or how much of it do you think you had to sort of bang your head against the wall and learn manually?
I think I had a little bit of both, just like everyone does. I definitely learned a lot. I'll tell you, no one wants to hear this, but if you read Shakespeare, if you legit read Shakespeare and you get into it and you realize what you have to do to understand it, because when you read Shakespeare, it's a different language.
Yeah.
It's a different language. It's actually the tail end of Middle English, I think. Middle English is pretty hard to understand. Shakespeare is starting to become modern English. And so there's words in there that you don't know. And there's sentence structures that don't make sense. And so the only way that you understand it is by looking up the words, by breaking down the sentence structures, by getting all the different possible meanings of certain words in a sentence. And so when you do that, when you look at something like a legal document, well, it is written in English, not Middle English, but English.
Yeah.
And so you might have to, it's not as hard to break it down, but you can definitely break it down. And the same thing with me for rules of engagement. Okay, I can look at that document, even though it's written by a lawyer and I'm not a lawyer, I would read it and be able to break it down and understand it because I had done that with the hardest task, which is complex Middle English Shakespeare.
So King Lear versus rules of engagement, both of them need to be disassembled and reassembled.
Exactly.
Huh.
Exactly.
And you learned how to do that in English, in your English classes, to disassemble something and put it back together, and that translated to military I would not have thought about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you think about this, once you understand the depth at which Shakespeare is written and how many different meanings these certain words have, well, then when you're communicating with people, you start to realize that what you're saying and how you're saying it and the words that you're using to say it are very important, and they have a lot more power than you think. And if I'm talking to you and you're one of my subordinates, there's words that I can use that you won't even realize that they mean something very specific, and you know what they mean. But I have to use the right words. So you have to be careful about what you say, and you have to choose your words carefully. And again, that's why I studied English. And I'm making it sound like I had this big grand plan, and I don't want to make it sound like that. Like I just thought, hey, if I can write better, I can do better.
Sure,
right?
Yeah.
Now looking back, I say, dang. And even as I was going through, I said, this is really powerful stuff. And now I look back and say, oh yeah, now I see the real true importance of it. I didn't see it at the time. I was too young and stupid.
Yeah.
Which I still am. I'm not young anymore, but I'm still dumb.
That's something I had in here as well, is that, what was it? It was someone asked you, what would you tell your 20-year-old self? And you started talking about humility, and you said, I would tell my 20-year-old self, you don't know anything. So what do you mean by that? What's the benefit to knowing that you don't know anything? Or telling your 20-year-old self that you don't know anything?
Well, when you're 20 years old,
You definitely don't know anything.
you definitely don't know anything, but
Yeah.
you definitely think you know everything.
Yeah.
At least I
yeah.
did.
Sure, me too.
I thought I had the world figured out. And then it's like 5-year increments. When you're 25, you say, oh man, when I was 20, I didn't know anything, but I know everything now.
Yeah, good thing. And
then when you're 30, you're saying, oh, when I was 25, I didn't know anything, but I sure know everything now. 35, same thing. And then you get to 40 and you say, okay, I recognize a trend. I didn't know anything then and I don't know anything now. I need to have an open mind and continue to learn.
How do you instill that in other people who think they know everything? I mean, you had to have those guys in the teams. You probably have some of them around your business. Your kids might be going through something like that at some point.
Oh yeah, well, it's a lack of humility is actually, it can be fairly easy to solve. One of the best deliverer of humility is life itself. Now, a lot of times if you've got a business situation or a family situation, you don't have time to wait for life to deliver the humility.
Yeah.
So you have to give that humility to them some other way. So if you were working for me and you lacked humility and you had a big ego and you thought you should be running everything, what I would do is I would give you some kind of a task, some kind of a project that was outside of your competency level. And then I'd say, hey, Jordan, since you're so awesome, here's a little project, or here's a big project, and I want you to handle it because I know you could probably be running this whole thing yourself. So why don't you go ahead and handle this project? And then you'd take the project, and now one of two things are going to happen. Either you realize, you get humble and you say, hey, Jocko, I didn't realize this was going on. I didn't realize how complicated this was. I need some help with this. Cool, you just got humbled and we can move forward. Or you are too arrogant to ask for help, and now what happens? You fall on your face.
Yeah.
Because I gave you a task that was slightly outside your competency level. So that's what you can do with people. And it actually works as well with someone that's, let's say you lacked confidence. Let's say you were too humble. Well, then I'd give you a project that was maybe not well within, but definitely certainly within your competency level. And I'd say, hey, Jordan, can you handle this project? It's a big project, but I know that you can handle it. And then you'd do it and you'd handle it, and your confidence would grow a little bit. And that's how I'm going to build you up to where you can take my job, which is what I want. And then I can take the next guy's job.
How often do you do that with Echo? One direction or the other? Up or down?
With Echo?
Yeah.
I don't know. You'd have to ask Echo that one.
What do you think?
In one way or another, every day.
In one way or another, every day.
Interaction, I would say, yeah. In one way or another. You don't realize it till later, though. That's the thing. That's the trick.
You're laying in bed and you're like,
yeah.
That's what that was.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I believe that. I feel like you guys have a great relationship. You can tell on the mic, or at least you're really good at pretending that you have a great relationship.
No, well, the good thing about Echo's a humble guy, and and it's the same with me. There's things that Echo knows. I mean, we were discussing making a video the other night, and I just said, I'll do some filming, and he's like, okay, but it's just a bad idea. That's not I have no competency in that area, so let's
get out the map and look at the map, and then talk about do some filming. Yeah. We're just gonna walk north. Yeah, that's the equivalent. That's the filming equivalent. Sorry. All right. Discipline equals freedom. The field manual. A lot of people are. I saw that tweet when it came a long time ago. You wrote discipline equals freedom, and I wrote it down because I went, "That's like, what does that mean? That's an oxymoron." And I thought, great book title. So good on you for that. But a lot of people don't maybe understand what that means. I mean, what's the relationship here? What's the connection between discipline and freedom?
Well, if you want freedom in your life, there's only one way to get there, and that's through discipline.
So let's back up and do like a small example of some of the mental and physical discipline things that you do every day. Everybody knows you get up early. Everybody knows you got the weights. It's in the inside cover of the book, the photo that you took, I think.
I took those photos.
Oh, you did? There's one that says photo by Echo Charles. Is that just a lie?
The photo on the cover is by Echo Charles.
Okay.
The photo on the cover is Echo Charles.
This one?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. I thought it was the weights photo. Gotcha. That's the one credit you get in the book is the...
Hey, it's on the cover,
It's
right?
on the cover. Yeah, you can't do better than that.
It's legit.
So, all right. So you work out every day. What about the mental part? What's the mental discipline that you do each day? I know one of them is getting up early, which is the hardest one, I would imagine, for most people to pick up.
It's interesting. A lot of people have a hard time getting up early, and it really does. It's interesting too, because even before the field manual came out, which really lays out how to go about this stuff in a pretty specific way, but before the field manual came out, I'd have somebody on social media that would say, "Hey, I need to drop weight and get in better shape," and I'd say, "Get up early, workout. Don't eat sugar," right? And 3 months later, I'd get a picture of the guy and he'd be, 29 pounds lighter, in better shape. And then people would say, "Oh, wow, that's awesome. What'd you do? How'd you do it?" And he'd say, "I woke up early, worked out, and I stopped eating sugar." That's it. That's the discipline. And so what kind of freedom does it give you? Well, it gives you freedom in life, right? When you're not in good physical shape, you don't have the physical freedom to do what you want to do physically. So the only way you can do what you want to do physically is by having discipline to work out, eat right, stay healthy, and that gives you the freedom, physical freedom that you want in your life.
So in the book, in the field manual, you write, discipline is the root of all good qualities, the driver of daily execution, the core principle that overcomes laziness and lethargy and excuses. But of course, as soon as I read that to a friend of mine when I'm going over the prep, he goes, "Well, I mean, some people have discipline and some people don't. How do you develop discipline? And I thought, all right, well, it's easy to say get up early, don't eat sugar, but a lot of people think that they can't do that. And I say think that they can't because I would imagine you would say that anybody can. Some people just think they can't. Yeah.
Yeah, you just answered the question.
I just answered the question. I got to stop doing that.
Right? Right?
Yeah.
Hey, people ask me all the time, how do you get up so early? Or how can I wake up earlier in the morning? And I say, okay, here's what you got to do. Set your alarm clock. When it goes off in the morning, get out of bed and go do your stuff, right? That's what I do. I don't have some mystical ritual that I go through that prepares me mentally for the morning rise. No, when the freaking alarm clock goes off, I get up, I get out of bed, and I start doing what I'm supposed to do. That's the difference. And to think that people don't have the power to do that is flatly wrong. Anyone can do that. People make that kind of course correction in their life all the time. I've personally witnessed thousands of people do it through social media. People that hit me up every morning, like, yeah, I'm up too. I'm getting after it. Yeah, people that I get amazing letters and messages through social media of people that have just radically changed their life around. And again, when people ask me, well, how do I get discipline in my life? I always give them the answer they don't want to hear.
Yeah.
It's get up out of bed early. That's like step one. And I think as childish as that might sound, or as rudimentary as that might sound, it really is. It's a real thing. Now, people get caught up around the fact that 4:30 in the morning, I can't get up at 4:30. Look, you need to figure out when you need to get up in the morning that gives you enough time to have a good day based on what you did in the morning. You need to figure out how much sleep you need. I need less sleep than most people, but you need to figure that out, and then you need to get on schedule and you need to stay with it, because when the alarm clock goes off and the pillow is soft and the bed is warm, that's the challenge.
It's that warm bed, man. I'm telling you.
Oh yeah, it's the warm bed.
Yeah.
It's the soft pillow that's holding you down there.
Yeah.
It's suffocating your dreams is what it's doing. That pillow is suffocating your dreams. Just like the snooze button should be called the dream killer. Because even though you can't dream anymore, your actual dreams in real life are being destroyed when you're laying in bed. So get out of bed.
How often does Echo get up? I didn't want to ask you in front of Jocko, but I'm curious now. How often do you get up at 4:30 a.m.? Never.
However many times the muster goes on.
Yeah. Oh, the muster. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah. Cool.
But you might need a little more sleep, which I understand, because last time I asked you how much sleep you needed, it was like 5 hours or 4.5 hours or something.
I mean, I usually go to bed around 11 and I wake up at 4:30.
Yeah.
But Echo goes to bed much later than me, so there's that.
Oh, yeah. That's true.
Between 6, 7, 8 hours.
Yeah. You know me, I'm not judging you. I'm just making funny because I feel like this is a rare opportunity for me to do so.
Well, that's another thing that's interesting is people say, well, you only need 5.5 hours of sleep. And I will sleep more, you know. I'll sleep for 6 hours. I'll sleep for 7 hours. Sometimes I'll go to bed at 9:45 or something.
Yeah.
It's a little hard for me to fall asleep at 9:45 because I am a human being. But here's the other thing.
Gotta watch The Good Wife.
Is people say, oh, well, I can't get up that early. And I say, okay, well, then just do more stuff during the day. Like, how much time do you waste during the day? How much time are you doing stuff during the day that has zero value on your life as a human being? A lot, usually.
Yeah.
How many YouTube videos do you need to watch in a day? How much social media do you need to check during the day? How much, even things like news stories, which believe me, I appreciate understanding what's going on with current world events, but how many stories are you going to read about the same subject? Like, okay, you know what's going on in this area of the world. Great, move on. We don't need to get drowned down in that unless you're making some kind of a strategic decision for the nation. Okay, fine, then do a little bit more research. But people waste their time on things that they don't need to waste their time on. Or what other television, right?
Yeah.
Television.
That's got to be the number one.
See,
I would imagine.
The reason it's
media.
barely on my list is because I have a television now, but we have like whatever the basic cable that comes free with your internet connection.
Yeah, that's what we got.
I get 9 channels or something. They all suck.
Yeah.
For me to watch TV would actually be torture because it sucks. So I don't even understand the TV thing. Yeah, if you have TV and it's eating up your time, which means if you're spending more than, let's call it 12 minutes a day watching TV, you should just hit that thing with a baseball bat.
Yeah, crush it, literally throw it out the window. Just
Yeah.
don't destroy the internet box or you'll regret it.
Yeah. Well, I need internet for my job.
Sure. Yeah, well, we all do. Yeah, of course. And I think, and a lot of people have these little devices that are programs that will like cut off Facebook. It'll not let them log into certain websites. I never really needed that because I have workaholism, less so than discipline, more addiction to the actual process. But I'll take that over killing time on social media any day.
You know, I think if I got to a point where I needed some kind of a program to mandate me being off of it, I would stop it completely.
Yeah.
This would make no sense to me. I'd say, what is wrong with me? That's a complete lack of discipline. Hey, if it works, I'm not saying it's bad for someone. If it works for someone and it gets them under control, cool. But for me personally, if I needed a program to mandate me off of things, I would see them as an addiction, and I don't like being addicted to things.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Like croutons in your Caesar salad.
You got a crouton addiction?
Yeah.
Do we need to talk about this?
No, I do. Yeah.
Oh, you do?
Yeah. Because I like Caesar salad, but croutons,
Oh, yeah.
they're not good for you.
Jen loves croutons.
Yeah.
I add extra.
Extra croutons.
I always
Yeah, you're an addict.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need to watch out.
You get a poke bowl and she wants like more of the onions on there.
Next thing you know, she's having Texas toast. You know what that is?
Yeah.
It's just like bread with butter and big giant pieces.
Like an inch and a half thick.
That's next down Jen's path of addiction.
If I see it in the house, I'm throwing it away, Jen. I'm taking it out. It's in the safe that I have no access to. It's in the walk-in closet. What about external versus internal discipline? I've never seen that. I'd never seen that distinction before until I read it in the field manual.
Mm-hmm.
And external discipline fails.
Yeah, well,
Or
external,
it can't
imposed discipline does have it does work for a little while. I mean, in the military, you get imposed discipline, especially when you first come in.
Yeah.
You will do this, you will do that, you will do this other thing. But the problem is that unless you are paying someone to continually impose discipline on you, which no one can do, then you have to have self-discipline.
You got to get married. Then you can have someone around to impose it on you all the time. But I feel like that would be unhealthy as well.
Well, if you were going to be, you might end up being resentful
Sure.
towards the person that, in fact, in most cases, you're probably going to end up being resentful towards people that are imposing discipline on you. In fact, I know I would. And I've talked about this before. When I joined the military, I told my dad, I said, hey, I just joined the Navy. I'm going in the SEAL teams. And he said something along the lines of, you're going to hate it because you hate authority and you don't like listening to people. And I said, no, it's the teams. It's a team. It's not like that. Which is completely wrong. It is like that. But what I did to overcome that, since I don't like listening to people, is I just tried to get ahead of the power curve. And I tried to get ahead and have the things done that I knew I would be told to do. I would try and have them already done. And that's a way to avoid having people tell you what to do, is to already have them done. So if you're imposing discipline, if your wife is imposing discipline on you and saying, you better clean the dishes. Well, if you get the dishes cleaned before she can ask you, then guess what? You just one-upped her.
I feel like you two may have planned that out before I came in. So
Maybe.
Maybe. Suddenly the dishes are all clean.
Yeah.
Dang it.
Yeah.
Jen's always one step ahead.
Here's how long does it take you to clean the dishes?
Yeah, minutes.
Yeah, minutes.
For me, probably just seconds.
Right.
I blow through that task.
There you go. Beast mode on the dishes.
Yep. Yeah, destroyer mode. I love that. So self-discipline, this is from the book as well, the field manual. Self-discipline comes from the decision to be disciplined. When you make a decision to be better, when you decide to make a mark on the world, how can we make that decision, the discipline decision, in a way that actually makes us better and isn't just lip service? Because I feel like a lot of people, you must see this on social media and in at any of your events or any of the guys you work with, where they're like, yeah, I'm going to get up earlier, I'm going to do this. A lot of people probably can't, they feel like they can't do it, or they feel like this is something they're going to say and they mean it in the moment and it doesn't happen.
Well, if you have people that aren't going to do what they say they're going to do, that's absolutely problematic. Yeah. So the whole point, and to me, and I say this, I've been saying this more and more lately, is everybody knows what they're supposed to do, right? People know what they're supposed to do. Like, you know what's going to make your life better. You also know what's going to make your life worse. So I say, do the things that are going to make your life better. and that's all I'm saying. And it's things that you come up with. You know, I've said this before on my podcast. If you wrote down the things that you know you should do tomorrow, and then tomorrow when you woke up, you actually did them, you would feel a pretty good sense of achievement. And then imagine where you'd be in 2 weeks if you did that every day. And then imagine where you'd be in 3 months if you did that every day. And then imagine where you'd be in a year if you did that every day. If every day you did what you knew you were supposed to do, imagine where you'd be. Well, you'd be in a great position. You'd be in a great place. So that's all I'm saying. And does that take discipline? Yes, it takes discipline. What you need to think about is some of the long-term, you need to think about those long-term benefits, because people forget when the alarm clock goes off, they don't realize that their whole life is going to be better by getting out of bed. They just think my life right now is going to suck because it's cold out there.
Yeah.
And I'm tired. That's what they think about. They don't think that literally my whole life will be better if I get up, get out of bed, and just do what I know I'm supposed to do.
It's hard to wrap your mind around that. That, like you said, the pillow, the suffocator of dreams.
Yes, indeed.
So you have to remember that in the moment. You got to wrap your head around that in the moment. And I feel like practice is probably the best way to do that, because getting up early has to get easier over time, or doesn't it?
You know, we made this audio album.
Yeah, the
Psychological Warfare.
Right.
And it was basically this. So Echo, who does the podcast with me, he was, basically asking me the same kind of questions you're asking me. Well, what do you think about here? And what do you do here? And I answered one of them, and he said, I'm gonna record that. And then he asked me about, and then he came up with a bunch more, and he asked me a bunch more. And he recorded all these tracks for this album. And that's what it is. So, and believe me, it's unbelievable the amount of people that have had great responses to those. Because again, a lot of times people say, "Oh, I wish you were there to yell at me in the morning." I don't yell on Psychological Warfare.
Yeah.
I just say, "Hey, here's the things you should think about right now." And something along the lines of, if you can get up and get out of bed right now, it's going to make your whole life better. Like I know it's going to suck for the next 18 seconds. Because let's face it, once you're moving, it doesn't suck anymore.
Yeah, it doesn't even.
You actually start to feel good.
Yeah, especially because you're up before the sun, man.
Psychological Warfare.
We'll link to that in the show notes, because I saw that so many people. I think it was on the top 50 iTunes charts or something like that.
Oh no,
top
my
20.
friend. Oh no, my friend. Psychological Warfare was the #1 spoken word album for 11 months.
Wow.
On iTunes. And it only got kicked out when Discipline Equals Freedom Field Manual. I didn't release it on Audible, because on Audible you can't make it into an alarm. You can't listen to certain tracks at certain times.
Yeah.
So I took the whole Discipline Equals Freedom book and made that into an album. And that's the album that beat Psychological Warfare on iTunes.
So you knocked yourself off.
Knocked myself out of the #1 spot.
That's gotta feel good.
I didn't know if I was going to be angry at myself or happy with myself. That's another dichotomy.
How did it shake out? Both. You emphasize learning from other people's strengths, obviously, as well as their weaknesses, though. And most people never think about that. They don't think about learning from other people's weaknesses. Either we do it subconsciously or not. But how do you do this? Do you journal it? Do you just observe? How do you build a practice based on what you see out of other people's strengths and especially their weaknesses?
Well, this goes back to what we were talking about earlier. When I first got in the SEAL teams, I wasn't journaling.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? I was 19, 20 years old. I wasn't journaling anything. I didn't have some grand master plan about how to become a better leader, but I was paying attention. And that's why I absorbed so much from bad leaders that I worked with.
Yeah.
Because I would just look at them, and the way I felt, I knew I didn't want to make anyone else feel. So I'd say, you know what? I'm not going to act that way. This guy acts like he knows everything. It makes all of us in the platoon not like him. I'm not going to act like that. This other guy acts like he wants to hear what we have to say and he values our opinion. That makes me like him and want to follow him. I'm going to act like that. So I just paid attention always to things that I like from leaders and things that I didn't like.
If you had to do that process again, do you think you'd write it down, or do you think that just doing it in the moment is good enough for most people?
Sure. I guess in an ideal world, if I wrote it down, then that would maybe have made things stick quicker.
Mm.
But at the same time, it was not on the prior. I know I was
Oh, yeah.
prioritizing and executing, which is, hey, I need to be a good SEAL. That's the number one thing. I need to make sure I'm up to par on all the various skill sets that we need. So I wasn't running home. I took notes on how to operate weapons. I took notes on how to operate radios. I took notes on various tactics. I still got those notes, but I wasn't writing down notes because those things were the priority.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm asking because I think there's probably people at a corporation right now going, yeah, I'll just observe casually, but you were taking notes on the things that were a priority. And if somebody wants to prioritize being a good leader in a certain situation or mirroring or not mirroring certain behavior, then I wanted to give them something to chew on.
And let me tell you what else would be good about that is when you write stuff down, you have to think about it and analyze it. So if you started writing down something that you didn't like about a leader or something that you did, it would make you interact with that person better because you'd understand what they were doing. So if you had a guy that showed up late 10 minutes every day, you might not even register that. But when you start saying, okay, what is it that I don't like about this? Oh, you write down, oh, he shows up late 4 minutes for every meeting, 5 minutes for every meeting. Oh, guess what? I'm not going to be like that. And then when he shows up late, you recognize what it is that's irritating you. And so I think it's very beneficial. When you write things down, you absolutely have to think through them. And I think that's, with the podcast, I have to write down, I write down even writing down the questions that people ask me. I write down the question and I put down some bullets of what I'm going to answer. Well, that's a thought process. And the more I do that, the better you get at it. Not even the better you get, the more when you write something down, you have to think about it. The more you think about something, the better you can understand it. So that's a very positive thing. I wasn't trying to be flippant about writing stuff down because it is important. It's completely unrealistic. If you knew me when I was 19 years old or 20 years old, you'd realize why I was laughing at the idea of me sitting there with a journal writing down leadership perspectives on my senior leadership. Yeah.
You guys have known each other for a long time, haven't you? Like 10 years or something, or 11 years?
What, 7? Yeah.
Oh, really? Something around there?
I don't know.
I think we started really training and hanging 11 years.
Yeah.
I knew him maybe right before you went to Ramadi.
Okay. So that's like 05?
Yeah.
Yeah. So since about 05.
Wow. So you've seen tremendous changes, obviously, because he came back from war and then started this business and now is here.
Yeah. Tremendous changes in 2 or 3 things. That's it, though. Same.
What are those 2 or 3? I'm curious now.
More let's say you had a wild pit bull that was he was trained to do a bunch of stuff, right? But he was just a wild pit bull. Same pit bull, same capability, but less wild. I would say that. More in touch with I don't want to use this because this isn't an actual example. This is more like a hypothetical example. Let's say someone didn't have discipline. Now he would understand it more. He'd kind of internalize and understand it and be like, okay, he'd look at it more analytically, more so than before he'd just be more dismissive. It seemed like it.
Huh. Okay, I can understand that. I'm just curious about that because I feel like even in the last couple of years, your business especially has changed so much.
Well, the business actually hasn't changed very much.
Or your brand maybe is a better word for it. I don't know, your imprint or whatever.
Because 2.5 years ago, I was just, no one knew anything about me.
Yeah.
Because I literally didn't have any social media whatsoever. I obviously didn't have a podcast. I didn't have a book.
Yeah.
And I was doing my own thing. And I think, so now there's light been shed on that, on me, right? So you can see who I am. But I think what Echo's talking about, and I think it goes back to what we were talking about, is when I first met Echo, I wasn't trying to get anyone else to be more disciplined. I wasn't trying to teach anyone any leadership techniques. I wasn't trying to help companies get their leadership aligned. And so I was just doing what I do.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as I just like jujitsu or anything that you teach, when you teach it, you become more aware of it. So I became more aware of what I was actually doing. And the more I became aware of it, the better I could explain it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably what it looks like from the outside, saying, oh, if you would have asked me these questions 10 years ago, the answers probably would have been the same, but they would have been a little bit different. And I would have been, oh, you want to get up in the morning? Get out of bed, which is the same thing I'm saying right now. So it hasn't really changed. And also in terms of the, Echelon Front, which is our leadership and management consulting company, we've been doing the exact same thing since I retired, since Leif got out of the Navy. And we've grown, obviously, because we got a lot more clients now, and we got more guys that are working with us, and so that it's grown. But we still teach the fundamental combat principles that are laid out in Extreme Ownership, and we still help companies get their leadership aligned and on board and moving forward in a unified way where they can go out and crush the world.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think looking at even the development of any business or your empire in particular, and then looking at
Empire's a little bit of a strong word.
I said empire because it was in that Success Magazine article, the one you talked about before. When I saw that word empire, I thought that's a word that Jocko would not probably use to describe that actually nobody would use to describe themselves unless they.
There's not too many people that would be, other than Caesar.
Yeah. Or somebody on Shark Tank.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know where I was going with that, so I'm going to just back it up. But becoming who you want to be one small decision at a time is a concept from the field manual. And I wanted to see what you actually mean by that, because you talk about not letting your mind control you. But what does that look like in practice?
It's actually exactly what it says.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same overall concept that we've been talking about. Mm-hmm. You don't wake up today and make this giant decision and become a new person. That's not what happens. You wake up today and you make a small change and you make the right decision. Instead of laying in bed, you get out of bed. Instead of eating a donut, you eat some beef jerky. Instead of watching TV, you do burpees. You just make these small decisions. And if you did that for one day, you probably wouldn't even notice it in the trajectory of your life. But if you did that every day, if you did those things every day, it will literally change the trajectory of your life. It's small decisions. It's, hey, I'm supposed to study for this exam I've got so I can get a promotion at work. Now, are you going to do better on that exam if you study for 20 hours or if you study for 2? We all know that you're going to do better if you study for 20 hours. We all know that you'll get promoted. Where do those 20 hours come from? You've got a month before the exam. You can't squeeze in a half an hour a day. You can't squeeze in an hour a day. You can't put in 2 hours on the weekend to make your life better. You can't make a decision to do what you know you're supposed to do. That's what I'm talking about. It's just small decisions.
You must have seen hundreds or thousands of people, especially now, not make those decisions. Why do you think they do that?
Comfort.
Or make the wrong decision. Yeah.
Comfort. The easy path. The path to misery is a comfortable path. The path to enslavement is a comfortable path. It's a path where you can sleep in. It's a path where you don't have to do the work that you know you're supposed to do. It's a path where you can eat whatever you want. It's a path where you can waste your time. It's a path where you can waste your money. It's all those things. That's a very easy path. It's a very comfortable path. And that path, where it ends up, you're a slave. There's no freedom there. At the end of that path, there's no freedom. You're a slave to your health. You're a slave to your finances. You're a slave to everything you know you shouldn't be. You end up a slave to. So you've got to fight against that. And it is a fight. And that's the thing that people are. My kids would say this. My kids would say something along the lines of, yeah, well, you're not normal. They say to me, well, you're not normal. And I know I'm not 100% normal. But if you think that sometimes I don't want to lay in bed and sleep in the morning and not get up and crush myself, you're wrong. Of course I want to do that. If you think I don't want to get after a double glazed jelly donut from time to time, oh yeah, I want to. Of course, and actually now I don't think I'll ever eat a donut again in my life right now.
Never?
Because I've talked so much smack about donuts.
Yeah.
I think if anybody ever, that's one of the lines on psychological warfare is I call donuts sugar-coated lies.
Yeah.
And I think I've talked so much smack about donuts right now. I think if I look at a donut, I think there's some guy about 400 meters away with a telephoto lens, and that thing's going on the World Wide Web. Me getting the jelly donut stuffed into my mouth. Yeah. So I don't think I'll ever eat a donut again.
Yeah, you can't. You got to do it in a dark room where you know there's no footage being taken.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's funny. Yeah, you can't. Yeah, that's your kryptonite then. That'll take the brand down.
Yeah.
10 notches, man.
Yeah.
One
people,
Krispy
you know how many people
Kreme.
post pictures of donuts? Because it's really sickening. If you think about it, in the corporate world, and again, I work with companies all the time, you go into their break room, they have donuts in there.
Yeah.
It's almost 100% of the nation. You go into the break room or the little kitchenette room, there's donuts there. And free donuts too, by the way.
Sure.
They're
So
free.
so you
They're
gotta
just
eat
giving
it.
them away.
Yeah, you should eat it. It's free.
You're actually, from your parents' perspective, you're kind of a loser if you don't eat the free food. You get that free food.
It's a perk.
And we're wondering, and we walk around, I hear these people saying, what's wrong with America? Why is everyone obese?
Yeah.
Does the word Krispy Kreme ring a bell? Dunkin' Donuts. That's what you find in the break rooms.
Yeah.
Put some beef jerky in there for crying out loud.
Beef jerky. It'll be a skinnier workplace, but it'll be a smellier workplace for sure. At that. I saw someone tweet at you. This is a long time ago. I take notes on all kinds of weird stuff. But somebody asked you how you stay focused when the stakes aren't as high now as they were in combat. Because I think his or her point was, well, if I was in combat, then I'd train harder, I'd be more disciplined, but, I'm not. So, of course, you can do it, but I've never been to war. So how do we take ourselves out? Maybe is it that we got to take ourselves out of comfort? Is that the answer?
Well, yes, you need to take yourself out of comfort, but what kind of stakes do you think you're dealing with? I'll tell you, you're dealing with all it's all right now. Because you know what? This is the only this is the only opportunity you're going to have. You only get one shot. As cliche as that is, you're going to die. And it's coming quick. And so if you don't think that the stakes are high right now, you're wrong. You're completely wrong. Go get one of those clocks that counts backwards to how many days you have until you die. Go get one of those. You'll see that the stakes are actually high. Every single day. Every single day that you wake up and you've got an opportunity to do something and you squander it because you're lazy, it's just wrong. Wrong. So yeah, the stakes are absolutely high, even for someone that's sitting in a cubicle somewhere trying to do something with their life. Their stakes are high. It's their life. Their life is on the line. Your life is on the line every day when you wake up. What are you going to do with it?
Yeah, I think he was just thinking, well, I'm not going to get shot. But if you're dying at some point anyway, it doesn't really matter how you go. If you're not focused at that time, then you never will be. Because I really do spend a lot of disproportionate amount of time looking at your Twitter feed for people with their excuses. Because people get pretty creative in there.
Yeah.
People try to stump you. I've seen it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you seen me get stumped?
No, I don't think so. I mean, there's been some where you kind of ignored the person, but I think it was just because it was a dumb question, or maybe you didn't see it.
Occasionally dumb questions.
Yeah.
Or I even now, because I used to, well, for a while I answered every single person that tweeted at me, and I couldn't keep up anymore after a certain point.
Sure.
And now Twitter changed their mechanism where you can't go back in time. You can't go back more than like 8 hours or 10 hours or something like that. So I just go through and, I'll do little airport Q&A, because I usually do social media when I'm traveling.
Sure.
So because I can't do anything when I'm in a car. I can't read when I'm in a car for whatever it is. I get a headache.
Oh, yeah.
But for whatever reason, I can still do Twitter. I can get after the social media. So I'll sit in the car, or I'll sit in an airport, and I'll hammer on it. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. I feel like that's really good to be accessible like that. I try to answer everybody too, but at a certain point, if you can't scroll back anymore, I abdicate responsibility at that point.
Well, today, actually, I flew in this morning, and while I was in the airport, I said, hey, I'm in the airport, Twitter, Q&A, go. And I did something at the ticket counter or whatever, and by the time 4 minutes later, I scrolled up to see, and it was completely filled with questions in like a matter of minutes. And so it's kind of a bummer because I can't get to all of them.
Yeah.
But I try.
Yeah, you could just record some little video that answers a bunch or something like that, I guess, right? Instead of typing it out.
Yeah,
That'd
I
be
guess. I'm pretty fast on Twitter, though.
Oh, are you? Okay.
Twitter's got predictive texts. So it's
yeah.
just like as soon as someone asks me a question and I hit reply, it says steak, jiu-jitsu, and thanks on the bottom. So I just boom, boom, boom. Those are most of my answers, right?
I guess so. I mean, it's learning based upon what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Mine probably does not say does not say that. It probably has thanks though. You wrote in the book, "Do not accept your weaknesses. Fight every day to change them." I like that, but of course, what I like are systems as well. Do you have a system that do you think, oh, I'm not that good at this, I should focus on that, or do you just go by what you feel in the moment that you need to work on?
The closest thing I could have to that is, I personally know when I don't like something. I know it. And when I know that and I feel myself avoiding it, I go at it. Because that to me is a real weak way to go through life. Is
avoiding things.
Everything that you don't like, you don't do. That's a real bad. It's in jiu-jitsu. Like, you're out on the jiu-jitsu mat, there's some guys that are going to give you some trouble. And there's two things you can do. You can say, "Hey man, I'm out. I'll see you later." Or, "Hey, I got a bruised rib," or, "I got a torn pinky hangnail. I'm going to go home." Or you can say, "Oh, you know what? Let's roll. Let's roll. And if you beat me, good. I'm glad, because that's what I'm here for."
Mm-hmm.
I feel that with anything. Anything that I feel is I'm afraid of, or I don't want to do, or I think is going to beat me down, I'm going to go get after that thing. And I definitely have a conscious thought about that. There's a workout in the field manual. It's heavy squats, 20 rep squats, take a 20-minute rest, another 20 squats, 20-minute rest, and it's 3 sets. It's absolutely savagely brutal. But that's one of those workouts where while I'm doing it, I'll be questioning if I even want to be strong, or if I even value my health. Maybe it's not even worth it. I don't care if I die. It's not that big of a deal. Who cares if I get old? All those things. They'll all be going through my head, and I'll hear all of them. And that makes me say to myself, okay, this is something that you absolutely should be doing because you don't like it at all.
So you lean into pretty much everything that you hate, as long as you think it'll make you better in some way. Obviously, if you don't like sushi, you're not going to go eat a bunch of sushi.
Yeah, and I actually don't like sushi, so you actually had a good guess right there.
Right.
Good job.
I don't know.
And I don't lean into it. I don't go to sushi bars. I don't force myself to eat it. So
no poke bowls.
No poke bowls from the Hawaiian.
Oh, that's too bad. You're missing out, man. Poke bowls.
I know.
Amazing.
I know. I wish I liked it. I have a real sense. I ate a lot of hamburgers growing up.
Yeah. Did you grow up in New England?
I grew up in New England,
yeah.
But so we would have these boxes of hamburgers, frozen hamburger patties. And so for breakfast, I'd have a hamburger patty on an English muffin. And for lunch, I'd have a hamburger patty on bread. And then for dinner, I'd have hamburger patty on a bun. So there you go. There's your three meals. 3 food groups.
Yeah. Different types of bread. In the book, you wrote that when you feel stressed, you're weak, you need a rest. Don't rest in the moment. And I love that, because otherwise you don't know if it's your mind tricking you into getting a rest or if you actually need a rest. Right. But if you tell yourself you can rest later, you probably won't need to. How do you know when you need to take a day off, or when it's the liar instinct kicking in, telling you to take a break?
You know. You know. You absolutely know. You know when you, like, I know when I need a rest, I'm beat down. And I know I need a rest. It happens. And you know it. It was really easy to tell when I trained a lot of MMA fighters. It was very clear to see when they would be overtraining, because they would go from, kind of crushing people in the gym and getting the better of everyone. And then all of a sudden one day they'd come in and they'd start getting beat down. And then the next day they're just a disaster. And I'd say, hey, take 2 days off and go eat some steak because you're overtrained right now, which is no big deal. It's no big deal. It's good to push that envelope to where you're overtrained a little bit, but as soon as you see it, you put a stop to it. So it's not as hard to tell when you're just making excuses. You know that your excuses are lies, and you know when you actually need rest. You know what that feels like. And here's the only advice I'd give on that is err on the side of getting after it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't err on the side of like, well, Jocko said I know I need rest, so I'm going to go ahead. I think I need rest today. No, that's not what I'm saying. Don't take rest if you don't have to. But if you have to and you feel it, take a rest tomorrow. Don't take rest today, because most of the time you don't actually need rest. Most of the time that human beings think they need rest, they don't need rest. Most of the time they're just being lazy. Most of the time I'm just being lazy. Oh, I don't know if I'm going to go to jiu-jitsu tonight because I got a long flight tomorrow. Oh, really? So you need to rest for a long flight? What is that? Where are you from? What world does that work out in? Not my world.
Yeah.
So go get on the mat. Go jack some steel, whatever the case may be.
Sleep on the plane.
Sleep on the plane, indeed. Or you could actually work on the plane.
Write your book. Write your next kid's book on the plane.
Write your next kid's book on the plane.
You do a lot of writing?
Echo watched me write a book. He was kind of surprised by that.
It was interesting. Yeah.
He was kind of, because we were going to the Origin camp in Maine. So we were going up to a camp up in Maine, which we're having again this year, a jiu-jitsu camp.
Nice.
And it's an awesome week-long thing. And we were going up to do that. We were coming back from it.
Yeah.
I think we were coming back when I started writing. So I had a book to write. And
you didn't write it just on that one flight, though.
No.
That would be insane.
No.
Okay.
Significant part.
I got a big chunk of it done. Yeah, got a big chunk. I write about 1,000 words an hour. And
What?
Yeah, I write about 1,000. It's not a lot. It's not?
It sounds like a
It sounds like a lot, but it's not. I write about 1,000 words an hour, and I usually only like to write for about an hour at a time, because then I want to smash things after that. So I usually write for about an hour at a time. But I write every day. Or when I have something I'm working on, then I try and write every day.
Do you write in the morning or in the evening?
It depends. It depends on when I can find time. And there are times if I have something due and I'm behind, I'll write in the morning. I'll write before I work out in the morning. I'll get up at 4:30. I'll write for an hour, get 1,000 words done, get that in the bank.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll go work out, which I actually like doing that, because when I wake up in the morning and then I get that done, and then you just feel good that knowing that you've got it done. And then anything else I do on that throughout the rest of the day is just a little bonus.
Mm-hmm.
Little bonus.
A little extra.
A little extra.
You wrote that it takes both logic and emotion to reach your max potential, because both emotion and logic will reach their limitations. So what do you mean by that? Obviously we have to harness both of these things. Mm-hmm. But what do we mean by that? That each one of those will only take us so far, obviously, right?
Well, you see it. You know where you see that? You see that. You see emotions play a role in any activity where someone needs to dig a little deeper, right? Mm. You watch somebody doing some kind of like the Olympics were just on.
Yeah.
Maybe the Winter Olympics isn't a great example, unless maybe the cross-country skiing or something like that, where you have to dig extra deep.
The biathlon, where they're doing the shooting.
Where you're doing that. You get to a certain point where your logic is saying, okay, you've had enough. Well, that's when you need to dig into your emotional side and be like, no, I can get more. And the same vice versa. If your emotion breaks and is like, you know what, this is stupid, I shouldn't be doing this, you need to overcome that with logic. Hey, if you want to get where you're going, then you need to do what you're supposed to do.
So do you have a conscious switch? Like, all right, I'm giving myself a bunch of excuses, talk myself into it.
Yeah, I just hear whichever side is winning the rational argument to stop doing what I'm supposed to do. I just pay attention more to the one that's actually saying, no, shut up and go.
Shut up and go, yeah. So you make the switch. Because you were talking about that super brutal workout, and it sounds like at some point it kind of threatens to break you emotionally. So you go,
sure.
No, I got to finish this. I started this for a reason. I know I can do it. Yeah. Not easy in the moment, though. But that's what discipline is, right?
That's where the discipline comes in.
The book actually discussed compromising is needed when you're working with other people. That hopefully goes without saying. I think people who don't compromise with others probably have a tough time at work and at home. But you mentioned never compromising when you're evaluating and working on yourself. how can we recognize in the moment if we're compromising with ourselves?
Well, these are the same questions that, this is the similar question that we're talking about. How do you know when you're lying to yourself? How do you know when you're just making excuses?
Mm-hmm.
Be honest with yourself. Be honest with yourself. Be honest with yourself. And I talk to people all the time. And there's no one that says to me, yeah, I have no idea what I should do to become a better person. There's no one that says to me, hey, I have no idea what I should do to improve my station in life. No, you know what you're supposed to do.
A lot of people confuse motivation and discipline. Do you have a distinction here?
Yeah, absolutely.
Why is it important to even know the distinction?
Well, because motivation is, hey, I'm feeling great. I'm super motivated. I'm going to go do this hard workout, or I'm going to go knock out this project, or I'm going to go do some chores that I have on my task list because I'm super motivated. Right? That's super. I'm glad that you're motivated today. But guess what? Tomorrow you won't be motivated. And then what do? Not do the workout, not do the tasks, not do the project because you weren't motivated. So motivation is good for about 15 minutes, but what you actually need is to have discipline, which is good permanently. As long as you maintain the discipline, it's always going to come through. And do something, right? Do something. One of the hardest parts about getting to the gym is getting to the gym. Once you're there, one of the hardest parts about, if you're going to write a book, one of the hardest parts about writing for an hour is the first 2 words. Once you're open the thing and you've got your brain is engaged, well, the rest of it's easy. Just about anything that you can do, it's like taking off the space shuttle, taking off from planet Earth. You got to break the gravitational pull, and you use most of your energy just trying to take off. It's the same thing with just about everything you do in life. The hard part is getting started. So go get started. At least give yourself that. At least make yourself go get started. Mm-hmm. If you go and you get to the gym and you do your first set of pull-ups and you decide, oh, guess this is not for me, okay, go home. At least you did that. 95% of the time, you're gonna feel fine. You're gonna do what you're supposed to do. There's another way to tell. Like, there's been some times where I've been super sore and I thought it was just an excuse. Mm-hmm. So I go and I try and do a set of pull-ups, or I try and do load the squat bar up and try and squat. And I realize on my first set, no, you're actually sore and you should not work out today. And then I'll do something light. I'll ride a bike or I'll go for a jog or something easy. But yeah, there's days where I have to actually reassess my initial assessment. My excuse was not a lie. Yeah. It was actually true. And I need to listen before I get hurt.
Yeah, you gotta, if you're feeling things ripping, you gotta go for the jog.
Yeah. Try not to let things rip.
Yes, not good. In fact, on that note, let's wrap with this, because you're famous enough to the point where you made a t-shirt that says good on it, because when you're faced with difficulty, your response is good. So people find that surprising. I think those people don't know you, obviously, but when people hear that, they get surprised. But I want to differentiate that between, how is that different from like a Mr. Smiley positive attitude, positive thinking, which doesn't fix many problems? How is that different?
Yeah, there's a big difference. And that is the guy, like you said, the guy that says, oh, hey, it's good, great, no problem. We're going to move forward. But they're not actually addressing the problem. I'm not saying that you ignore the problem. I'm not saying that when something bad happens, you pretend that it's not there. I'm actually saying the opposite. I'm actually saying when you have a problem or you have some issue that's come up that is negative, what you do is you say, good, here's a chance to learn from that problem. Here's a chance to address that problem. Here's a chance to improve myself through some kind of trial. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. So something comes up that's bad, good, I'm going to go handle it. And that's a lot different than, hey, this bad thing happened, good, I'm happy it happened. And now I'm going to sit around and let it happen more. No, I'm not going to sit around and let it happen more. I'm going to address it, I'm going to attack it, and I'm going to get it solved.
So it's like a problem signaling, and you say, good, now I can get this handled, or figure out how to make sure this never happens again.
Yeah, and you will get benefit out of it. You will get, when bad things happen, you do get benefit out of it. You absolutely do. You come across some challenge, some unexpected thing occurs, and it tries to drag you down. That's going to make you stronger. That's going to make you smarter. That's going to make you better. So you should absolutely relish those opportunities that you have when things aren't going your way. Relish those opportunities and get after it.
Last but not least, man, what's going on with the kids' book? You wrote one, and now you're heading down that direction. It seems unusual, but I think it's great because people ask me for stuff for kids all the time.
Yeah, well, the first
Kids in confidence.
the first kids book was I mean, the feedback that I've gotten from the first kids book has been amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Everything from kids that have gained all kind of confidence, and now they can do pull-ups, and now they could do jiu-jitsu, and now they're getting an A in school, all the way to adults that, I got this one great letter that I actually read on my podcast, and I don't read many letters like this, but this one I did, and I'll tell you why. I got this letter that said, hey, I was, 38 years old, and I was drinking all the time, and I was out of shape, and I was doing bad at work, and basically my life was not going well. He goes, and then I read your book. And he said, and I started waking up, and I started doing this, and I started working out, and I stopped drinking every night, and then I started eating healthier foods, and then I started paying attention at work. And he goes through this whole thing, and now X amount of time later, I'm in such a great position. And the book I read was Way of the Warrior Kid, which is a kid's book.
Right, yeah.
But the lessons, what's great about that book is that the lessons, they're written so that a 8-year-old can understand them. And if an 8-year-old can understand them, then every adult that reads it, and believe me, adults tell me this all the time, it's a great book for anyone to read because the lessons from Uncle Jake in the book are so simple and so clear, and they make so much sense that it's hard to deny that it's a good way to go about living. And that book I would say it did great, but it's doing great. It's crazy how that book is continuing to hold and sell. And I got another kid's book coming out called Marc's Mission. You can pre-order it right now, but more challenges. So the kid in the book, he can't do any pull-ups.
Right.
He
gets
doesn't know
bullied.
his times to tables. He doesn't know how to swim, and he's getting bullied at school. And he's all bummed out. Last day of school, goes home crying, and he remembers that his Uncle Jake is coming into town. His Uncle Jake was a SEAL, and his Uncle Jake, when he finds out about all these problems that young Marc is having, he says, these aren't problems. We can get them solved. Teaches him how to exercise, teaches him how to study, teaches him how to fight, teaches him how to swim, goes back to school. All these problems are solved. And the second book starts off with young Marc. It's the last day of school, and young Marc is in the principal's office. And he's in the principal's office because he got in trouble for hucking a papier-mâché pumpkin at another kid's head. And it hits the teacher in the head and bounces off it hits the kid in the head and bounces off the kid's head and hits the teacher in the head. And she falls down. He gets kicked out of class, gets sent to the principal's office, and he's getting sent home. And who comes to pick him up at school to take him home? Uncle Jake, who's back in town. And he realizes that Marc lost his temper. And so guess what? You need to learn to control your emotions. So Uncle Jake has more lessons for Marc this summer. He learns about controlling his emotions, learns about hard work, learns about taking care of other people. The new character introduced in the second book is a kid named Nathan James. Nathan James he's a different kind of bully. Nathan James is more of a psychological bully, and he makes fun of people, and he picks at their weaknesses, but he avoids physical confrontation. But it's equally devastating to some of the kids that are around, including Marc. And Marc, he's confident that he can fight because he's stood up to the biggest bully in town, but he doesn't know how to deal with this psychological torment. And so they end up in summer camp together. And Marc's not quite sure how to deal with this kid. And Uncle Jake teaches him a lot about interacting with other people, especially people that might be antagonistic, and also judging people and what they've been through and what they're going through and what their lives are like before you decide that you're going to take a course of action against that person. You don't know anything about them. So what he ends up learning is he learns a little bit more about Nathan James's life, and Nathan James lives a very hard life in comparison to Marc. And he kind of realizes why he acts out. It's because he's has a bad life, has a rough life. And instead of making that rough life worse, Marc decides he's going to try and make that rough life better.
And you'll find out how, April 2018. We'll link it up in the show notes.
Yeah, book comes out.
Yeah, we'll link it up in the show notes. Thank you very much, man.
Yeah,
Always
thanks
a
for having me on.
This was great.